I'm Jake.
I'm Tom.
And we are Velocities in Music. On this podcast, Tom and I discuss a range of topics pertaining to modern music, including artist deep dives and monthly and new album wrap-ups. Tom, this is a kind of a special podcast that we're going to do today. The Grammys are coming up. We mentioned in our last podcast, our January wrap-ups, that we wanted to talk about the Grammys. It's a subject that you and I get into every year, talking about who's nominated for what and then who wins what awards. The Grammys are coming up on February 15th. So, a week, we're recording this on Sunday the 7th. And so we have about a little over a week before the Grammys are. And so we'll try to get this podcast out to you guys sometime this week. But what we wanted to do today was just run through some of the categories being presented at the Grammys and who's nominated for what and what our general thoughts on the Grammys are.
Right.
So without further ado, I think we'll jump into that.
Right. So the Grammys, this is where you're going to hear me get a lot more cynical and catty than I normally would, because the Grammys really piss me off.
Why so, Tom?
Well, they're meant to highlight the best in music, right? But it's just a bunch of commercial bullshit to me. Sometimes they do a good job, sometimes they try to get variety in there, but they really don't get that much variety. They get the artists that they know people will watch so that they can make the advertising money that they want to. And yeah, I know this sounds like a lot of hippie crap, and as I say it kind of feels like that. But come on, if you listen to music at all, you just know that there's so much more out there. Now, right. I will say sometimes they get it right. When Arcade Fire won Album of the Year with Suburbs, which then it just exposed the entire ignorance of the Grammy watching population. When you had this, who's the Suburbs? Who's Arcade Fire? Right. No one even knew who it was. Right. Because that's the thing. The Grammys feel like an event for people who think they like music but really don't like music.
Yeah.
But the problem is that the people who put it on cater to that audience. Right. And I think that's just shameful. I mean, Jake, you and I, naturally, we're not going to get to everything. The Grammys have a ton of categories. In fact, I should probably actually check on how many. The Grammys have 83 different categories, and how many of those do they actually highlight on Grammy night and air on television?
Right.
It's not like the more obscure Grammys are any less of an award than, Record of the Year or Album of the Year, but they don't get highlighted because they know people won't watch that. It just seems like kind of a sham to me, and it's frustrating to no end because Jake, you and I, we're just two guys who do a podcast. Right. We try to cover a lot of music, but we know that we miss a lot. But these are people much older than us. You and I are just 20-somethings who do this for fun on the side. We can't really be expected to know everything, but it's not our responsibility to. I feel like the people who run the Grammys have a responsibility to actually keep up with music, but it seems like they just go with the things they're familiar with. Oh, Dave Grohl put out something new? Let's get him in there. Taylor Swift put out something new? Let's get her in there. And that's not even to discredit Dave Grohl or Taylor Swift. They're talented individuals, but come on. In this Grammy circuit, you've got stuff from the new Foo Fighters album, Sonic Highways, which is actually a year and a half old by now. I should point out that the Grammy time period goes from October to September, so you could very well, Grammys 2016, have stuff that was released at the end of 2014. But if you really think that Sonic Highways was some of the best rock music coming out in that time period, you're not listening to very much music.
And
I just don't think you are.
And you clearly didn't listen to Deaf Heaven.
No,
you didn't listen to Deaf Heaven or Blur or several other great artists that had good releases last year.
So sometimes they get stuff right, but here, this Grammys, I feel like is just kind of, it's a little bit weaker. So
why is that, Tom?
Because there's just not much variety. There really isn't.
Not much variety in what's available or in their nominations?
In the nominations.
Okay.
In the nominations, they rehash the same artists who they know are going to get attention, and they don't really dig deep to get some of those unknowns. I feel like they always have one as their token indie artist, and there are a couple categories that lend more to that, like Best New Artist, like Best Alternative Album. They just have one category for Alternative Album, whatever the hell that means, and I think they just scoop the leftovers off of the table and throw it into that category, which usually ends up being some of the best artists. This year, I actually feel like that category is even a little bit weaker. But what I would like to do now is go through a few of these categories and kind of talk about, Jake, you and I, who we think is probably likely to win and who we think should win. and we'll see how it goes.
Let's do it.
So we'll start off with Record of the Year, which, by the way, to add some explanation here, Record of the Year is actually different from Song of the Year, and for anyone out there who, like me, used to get really confused by that, the way that the Grammys differentiates that is a Record of the Year takes into account performance, it takes into account also the mixing, audio engineering, production, mastering, that whole package and presentation.
And it's not the album of the year, though.
Right. This is just Record of the Year, individual song, whereas Song of the Year is more songwriting being taken into account.
Interesting.
And stuff. So what we have for Record of the Year is Really Love by D'Angelo and the Vanguard, Uptown Funk by Mark Ronson and Bruno Mars, Thinking Out Loud by Ed Sheeran, Blank Space by Taylor Swift, and Can't Feel My Face by The Weeknd. A very familiar recurring cast of characters, I might point out. Jake, are there any that jump out to you as you think that they'll probably take the cake on that one?
Blank Space by Taylor Swift, for sure.
I think she'll probably take it as well. If I had to have my pick, I would pick either D'Angelo or Mark Ronson. I actually thought that Uptown Funk, while it was a popular top 40 track, I thought it was really outstanding.
Yep, great song.
So we'll see how that one turns out. Album of the Year, here's what we got. Sound and Color by Alabama Shakes, To Pimp a Butterfly by Kendrick Lamar, Traveler by Chris Stapleton, an artist I'm not overly familiar with, but he's kind of a country bluegrass musician, Taylor Swift's 1989, and The Weeknd's Beauty Behind the Madness.
Well, if Kendrick Lamar doesn't win that, I'm going to be sorely disappointed.
That's exactly how I feel about everything that Kendrick Lamar was nominated for, because he's actually on here several times, and it gives me a little bit of hope that To Pimp a Butterfly is being recognized for the genius that it is.
Yeah.
But, like, I'm sorry, come on. If Alabama Shakes beats Kendrick Lamar, I might cry a little bit. I also got to say, The Weeknd's Beauty Behind the Madness, I mentioned Can't Feel My Face was nominated for Record of the Year. And that song is okay. I'm kind of sick of it by now, but that whole album was just really boring and bland and pointless to me. Once again, I feel like they're really just going for popularity. Beauty Behind the Madness and then Taylor Swift's 1989 were both chart toppers. They were selling a lot, so I don't know if these guys are just getting lazy and assuming that what's selling is naturally going to be the most award-worthy work, but that's kind of what it feels like. So we'll move on to Song of the Year. We've got All Right by Kendrick Lamar, Blank Space by Taylor Swift, Girl Crush by Little Big Town, so we got some country in there, See You Again by Wiz Khalifa, and Thinking Out Loud by Ed Sheeran. I mean, once again, if Kendrick Lamar doesn't win that, I don't even know.
Will you have any faith left in music?
I very well might not. Blank Space, maybe. Like Taylor Swift, I can live with her.
I still like Ryan Adams' version better.
Yeah, no kidding. Give that guy some credit. I think that we should just replace every single Taylor Swift award with Ryan Adams' version of it. I think that'd be a fantastic joke to play, but Taylor probably wouldn't appreciate it. Let's face it. So moving on, Best New Artist. We've got Courtney Barnett. Pretty good pick there.
I would agree with that.
Pretty good pick.
I hope she wins that.
James Bay, Sam Hunt, Tori Kelly, and Meghan Trainor. Now, I'll say a few of those I have not even heard of, not even really seeked out. I hope Courtney Barnett wins,
for sure.
Of course. I would not be surprised if Meghan Trainor takes it just for popularity, though, because she's had a couple of bigger songs. I'm going to skip ahead a bit. We've got some pop performances and stuff that basically would just be rants about how crappy Jake and I think they are, so we'll skip that. One I do want to highlight, actually, is Best Dance Recording. This is actually where we get a little bit of variety. We've got We're All We Need, which is Above and Beyond, featuring Zoe Johnston. We've got Go, which was the Chemical Brothers featuring Q-Tip. That was actually one of my favorite tracks of last year, so it's cool to see that on there.
Yeah.
Never Catch Me, which is Flying Lotus featuring Kendrick Lamar from his most recent album, You're Dead, came out at the end of 2014, actually. Then Runaway by Galantis and Where Are You Now by Skrillex with Diplo and Justin Bieber. So I really hope that Flying Lotus or Chemical Brothers wins that one. I wouldn't be surprised if they don't, but it's cool to see a couple of good, worthy nominees on there. Same thing with Best Dance Electronic Album. We've got Our Love by Caribou.
Nice.
Cool to see Caribou nominated for Best Dance Electronic Album. Born in the Echoes by Chemical Brothers. We've got the newest Disclosure album, Caracal, on there. Jamie XX's In Color.
Nice.
I hope that one wins.
Yeah, absolutely.
I love
that was a good
album.
record.
And then Skrillex and Diplo. So really, I think that's a category you can't really go wrong with. I kind of hope that Skrillex doesn't win, just because I'm not a huge Skrillex fan and I like the other picks better.
And everyone likes Skrillex, right? So it's fun to be controversial.
Right. Right. I'm just trying to be arbitrary on
Obviously.
that one.
That's just your MO, really, right?
Right. So Best Rock Performance. This is where I really start to get disappointed. We've got Alabama Shakes, Don't Want to Fight.
That's rock?
Florence and the Machine, What Kind of Man?
Oh, man.
Is that rock? Someone tell me if they...
I mean, they rock out. I wouldn't call it rock.
I wouldn't call
music.
it rock either.
That's what I would classify as like alternative.
Right. You'd think. But we'll get to that in a moment. We've got Foo Fighters, Something from Nothing.
Sure.
Ellie King's X's and O's, and Wolf Alice's Moaning Lisa Smile. I just feel like if those are your top rock picks, you're not looking.
They didn't even try.
No, you're really not. We've got Best Metal Performance here, which is another one I feel is kind of weak. August Burns Red, Identity, Ghosts, Cirrus, I don't know how to pronounce it, Lamb of God, 512, Seven Dusts, Thank You, and Slipknot's Custer, which even some of those artists that I like, the albums that are being highlighted there are like the weakest of those artists' works. I'm not digging it. Skipping ahead a little bit. All right, so Best Alternative Music Album. Here's what we got. More Alabama Shakes with Sound and Color. Bjork's Volnicura.
Okay.
My Morning Jacket's The Waterfall. Tame Impala's Currents. And Wilco's Star Wars.
All right, so at least a few more artists
some
that
variety.
had good releases last year.
I mean, for me, it's got to be either Bjork or Wilco.
Yeah.
Tame Impala and My Morning Jacket, I'd like to see get some recognition, but let's face it, I think that their albums from last year are not their strongest releases.
Sure. I would not mind seeing Currents win there.
Just off of principle.
Just the fact that, first of all, I loved Lonerism, but and while I didn't like Currents as much as I did Lonerism, I still really liked Currents and wouldn't mind seeing it win. And plus, like, to see a band like Tame Impala win a Grammy, I think would be really cool. I personally, though, I think Bjork is more deserving of it, but
yeah, I agree. I think my first pick would go to Bjork for sure. I'm going to skip ahead to Best Rap Song. We've got All Day, which is the Kanye Paul McCartney collaboration. All Right by Kendrick Lamar. Energy by Drake. Glory by from the Selma soundtrack, that's Common and John Legend, and then Trap Queen by Fetty Wap.
Okay.
Yeah, Fetty Wap. I just love saying Fetty Wap, I gotta say. But I mean, if that's not Kendrick Lamar once again, then what the hell is wrong with
I hope
the
that
world?
guy sweeps the Grammys.
Dude, he'd better. It would give me a lot more faith. Best Rap Album looks pretty familiar. J. Cole's 2014 Forest Hills Drive, which came out in 2014, oddly enough. Dr. Dre's Compton. Drake's If You're Reading This, It's Too Late. Kendrick Lamar's To Pimp a Butterfly, and Nicki Minaj's The Pink Print.
Oh my, you're kidding me.
Yeah, there's always got to be that groaner in there, but actually I feel like this is decent for the rap category. J. Cole's album was pretty good. Dr. Dre and Drake, I was a little disappointed in relative to their past work, but I wouldn't hate it if they won. But more like Kendrick Lamar, man.
Right.
Come on.
That's a no-brainer.
Yeah, if he doesn't win that, then what the hell is? I don't know. And then we got country. Of course, as you move on through the categories, you get jazz, classical, new age, all the genres that are just as worthy, but that they don't show on air because it's not going to make them any money or get any viewers, which is, I think, a damn shame. If you're going to watch the Grammys, if you're going to put together this list of nominees and put an award show together, come on, be thorough about it, be respectful about it. I don't feel like that's really happening, and I don't feel like the Grammys fully represents the best of music coming out, but it's still a lot of fun to watch. You see some cool performances. So Jake, I look forward to watching that, taking some notes, talking about the performances and the winners.
Yeah. So this is really just a preview of what's to come.
Right.
So next week, we'd really like to put together a thorough review of the Grammys, which is going to be an interesting take for us, Tom, reviewing something that is a very visual experience.
Sure.
Very corporate experience. So obviously, you're going to get a little bit of our just candid opinions on that. The Grammys are, when it comes down to it, the Super Bowl of music. And like football, the Super Bowl is incredibly corporate and not really about what the sport or the art is, right? And like the Super Bowl is tonight, Tom. And in that Super Bowl, you're going to have a halftime performance that is just way over the top, trying to top every year prior. You're going to have most people who are going to be watching are watching for the Super Bowl, the halftime show, and they're going to be watching for the commercials.
For the ads,
the game no one cares about except for the true hardcore NFL fans, and even the NFL in general is very corporate to begin with. So, with the Grammys, it's almost insult to injury because there is so much great music out there, and then they're obviously catering towards a TV audience, and as you said, people who don't know who Arcade Fire are, and honestly, that's okay. And every once in a while, I think every few years, you'll see them nod to an indie artist like the Arcade Fire. But all in all, it is what it is. It's meant for TV ratings, which is unfortunate, and gives us something to talk about. So it at least has a little value there, right?
Yeah. And I will say, though, it kind of sucks because we got the Academy Awards as well. And I feel like the Academy Awards just does naturally a better job of including films that are lesser known than the Grammys does of including music that's lesser known. Now maybe some film buffs out there would disagree with me, but I always find when I'm going and looking through the Academy Award nomination list that I always find something that I hadn't really heard of that is very actually artistic and good.
Okay, guys, which Grammy nomination do you find to be the most absurd, and which Grammy performance are you most looking forward to? Let us know at velocitiesandmusic.com. Remember, Velocities of Music does not want your money. We also don't want to introduce ads into this podcast. Right now, all we want is for you to share Velocities and Music with family or friends whom you think would benefit from joining in on the music discussion Tom and I try to create every week. Thank you guys for your continued support and participation. We love all of your comments on our YouTube videos, Facebook messages, and emails. Your participation is what makes Velocities and Music possible. So as always, thanks for being awesome. I'm Jake.
I'm Tom.
We are Velocities and Music, moving music discussion forward.